Thank you, Senator Merkley, for coming to Eugene. I'm Bob Soder from Cottage Grove.
Bob, what number do you have?
357224.
Thanks, we'll retire it.
What is your opinion on the Oregon testing the waters for implementing a carbon tax through the Oregon Innovation and Infrastructure Task Force? And a carbon tax was rejected by the Congress. I'm really concerned about the impact it's going to have on the economic impact it will have on not just rich people, everybody be involved in this because most prices will rise.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
You bet, you bet. Let me start from the perspective of saying that carbon pollution, I believe, is a very big deal, and that we have to work to address it. And that's going to involve conversations, activity at the local level, the state level, the national level, the international level. And I think one way of capturing this is the number 400. 400 is a very significant number in the future of the world. And can anyone tell me why?
Parts per million.
Parts per million of carbon pollution. Now, when we hit 350, folks said, you know what, we cannot allow this to keep going up, and we got to slow down our carbon pollution so that by the time we get to 400, we're coming back down again. Well, unfortunately, the opposite has happened. The rate of carbon pollution is escalating, such that 30 years ago it was 1 part per million per year on an average, and now it's 2 parts per million per year on an average. Now, if you think about before the Industrial Revolution, it was 270. It has been many, many millions of years since carbon level in the air was 400. And it changes the heat trapping properties. Now, some folks feel like this is some theoretical issue that may affect us 7 generations from now. And that is not the case. It is affecting us on the ground right here, and you can think of it in terms of what it's doing to fishing, and to farming, and to forestry. Starting with forestry, we have a big pine beetle infestation that is growing because there's not enough cold snap to kill off the beetles. That adds to the fire hazard. Then we have more lightning strikes because of the type of storms that are coming, because there's more humidity in the air coming in off the ocean. And those lightning strikes are hitting forests with a lower moisture content, and so they light up faster. So forests are affected. Or how about fishing? I just went over the Cascades yesterday, and the Cascades, when you're crossing Mount Hood, looked like it had about an inch on the side of the highway. And I came back over the Cascades, or not really, I back down towards Klamath, and then Klamath Falls, and then around Medford, and then around. Anyway, there's no snow. And the reservoir is low, really low. And if you have less snowpack, and there was a study recently in the paper about tracking the years of snowpack at Crater Lake, then the streams in the summer are smaller and warmer, which affects our fishing. And there's probably some fishermen here who could attest to that. Or how about over on the coast, where we're having trouble with the oyster seed, which are the baby oysters, and they're having trouble because they depend upon shell formation. And the shell formation is being affected by carbonic acid in the ocean, which is the result of carbon dioxide being absorbed into the ocean. And that's just a harbinger of what can come as the acidity level rises. And then when we look at agriculture, down in the Klamath Basin, we had 3 worst ever droughts in 13 years. And the way it's going right now with the winter snowpack, we may have the next worst ever drought this coming year. And so it's very real. It's having a big impact. It's impacting things it's not like Oregon is the epicenter. You can find these stories in every state. And so we have a responsibility as stewards of this planet to be engaged in this issue of carbon pollution. And that means here in America, we need to take on the pollution from buildings. And by the way, energy-saving retrofits can have a big impact on that. So a side benefit from employment and good stewardship on energy. Certainly, there's a lot we can do in transportation, both cars and trucks, and the whole process of down to bike lanes and mass transit. And the power generation. There was a letter or an op-ed today by Angus Duncan. And it was, I think the title was The End of Coal or something like that. Well, what he was pointing out is that coal plants are disappearing across America, and if we proceed with requiring the best available technology to reduce the carbon pollution, they'll disappear even faster, and that will have a significant impact. So we have to work in all of those areas. Now, at the federal level, there is no window at this point in regard to pursuing an externality strategy where you put a price on the pollution that goes with an activity. But there is that opportunity at the state level. I know you were standing up speaking your concern about it. But I'm explaining to you why I think it's a very important conversation for every community to be having. And we have a lot of state legislators here who will be involved in that conversation. And this is probably a point to see if any of them want to speak to it.
Especially the economic impact part to the citizens.
The economic impact. And any takers? Okay, well, they will be having that conversation when they're in session in 2015. But one reason I wanted to highlight the impact on fishing, farming, and forestry is the pollution itself has an impact as well. So an externality fee can have an impact. If those funds, there's also this strategy of fee and rebate, which is an interesting strategy where you don't raise revenue, but you change the incentives so that the money goes back into the economy and creates an equal amount of economic activity. There's also the strategy of using fees to help replace some with carbon-producing energy sources, replace some with renewable energy strategies that don't produce that carbon. And that can create an economic activity. So it's an interesting, complicated conversation. Important to bring concerns forward and wrestle with it. But that's why I think it's a conversation worth having.
Can I make a comment about that?
You can make a comment if you get a ticket.
I have a ticket.
If you get called.
Well, it's relevant to this conversation.
If you don't get called on, you're welcome to come up afterwards. But
It's relevant to this topic.
We'll leave it as a courtesy to everyone to proceed with.
I think they would want to hear my comment or my question.
Well, I think we have one more.